This is a Geek Leader podcast, and I'm your host, John Rauda. This show is all about helping us grow as leaders, become better technologists, and improve our lives both at work and at home. I hope you enjoy the show and learn a lot. Hello, world, and welcome to a Geek Leader podcast. I'm your host, John Rauda. Today's sponsor is A2 Hosting. I've been using A2 Hosting solid-state hosting solutions for our website at geekleader.com for many, many years now, and absolutely love their support, their service, and all the features that you get. You get access to cPanel. You get all of the things that you can imagine for a great WordPress experience, including their A2 optimized WordPress, which does extra security checks, extra lockdown. You can lock down your editor file so you can't edit anything inside there. You get alerts whenever there are file changes that are done. You can also do automatic updates, backups, and more with A2 Hosting. So highly recommend it. Go to geekleader.com/A2 to get more information and to sign up for their solid-state, turbocharged speed hosting today. Again, that's at geekleader.com/A2. All right, Geek Leaders, today I'm honored to have John Vincent and Deb Fortin on the show. We're going to talk about their company that they founded called the Submarine Way. We're going to talk about their book, PERISCOPE, and diversity and inclusion. We're going to talk a lot about leadership in general because that's what's mostly what I'm interested in, and I think that's important. And anyway, with all that being said, John, Deb, welcome to the show. If you guys don't mind, just tell the audience a little bit about your backgrounds and how you got to where you are today, and what is it that you guys have created with the Submarine Way.
Okay.
Cool. Thanks for having us, John. First and foremost, we're happy to be here. I am John Vincent. You can probably tell I'm not Deb.
True enough.
In any possible way, by the way. But anyway, so I think what's pertinent probably to my background is I'm a retired Navy Command Master Chief, 20 years in the Navy, almost 15 of those years on submarines. So that's the Submarine Way. And the model of leadership on submarines is pretty fascinating. It's a bunch of 20-year-olds with high school diplomas safely operating. This is a nuclear submarine, safely operating one of the most complicated vessels in the world in one of the most hostile environments. So very precise way of leadership. Probably most pertinent to your audience is the fact that I was a workplace consultant at Gallup after I retired. I'm a human behavioral and leadership development geek. And this company started off as a speech. I'm a keynote speaker. Deb is a magnificent writer. She wrote both of our books. And she wrote a speech on a very different approach to diversity and inclusion based on how it's done on submarines. And the speech just absolutely went nuts. We always do well, but we don't have people following us out to parking lots asking us, how do we do this? How do we train this? So I was at Gallup at the time, and Deb left her job, started writing Diversity and Inclusion, the Submarine Way, which was our first book. Couldn't meet the deadlines at Forbes. They had very aggressive deadlines. So she left corporate America, and she wrote the book, and she launched a company on her own, and then I joined her. What's unique about our approach, John, is the methodology is right out of submarines. It's talent-based, inclusion-focused, and mission-oriented. And what Deb has, mostly Deb and myself have done, is we've turned it into a 4-step process where we assess organizations and key people. We coach those key people. We then individually, and then we coach them collectively, and then we reinforce what they've learned so the behaviors get ingrained. That is our system. It is unique enough that we actually have a published patent on it, which is pretty impossible to do on leadership because it's sort of a saturated world. But that's probably more information than you want. But that's me.
Well, is there still time for me to talk about?
Absolutely.
Can't tell I'm the speaker, can you?
Well, my name is Deb Fortin, and I spent 25 years in the corporate world and very involved in evolving diversity and inclusion programs, building programs where they didn't exist, and using sort of an innovative approach to that, because I felt like there needed to be an innovative approach to driving inclusion in organizations. So I left there, as John said, I left the corporate world when to start the book and to start the company, Diversity and Inclusion, the Submarine Way is our book. And so it's been a very interesting 6 or 7 years working with corporations to drive better inclusion, better collaboration in their organizations, and to kind of go where our clients need us to go. So it's been fun.
Nice. Yeah, I think that's awesome how you guys have kind of taken some of the ideas that you've, learned, in the military and with diversity and inclusion and kind of applied them in a way that makes a unique approach to it. Because it's not the from what I've been reading online and stuff, it's not the standard cookie cutter, diversity and inclusion packages and programs that you see out there today.
No, it's not. And in fact, one of the things that we did that was so different in the book, I think, which got the phone ringing almost right away, is we talked about the return on investment. A lot of diversity and inclusion programs, their emphasis is really it's the right thing to do. Mm-hmm. And quite frankly, it's the human thing to do. We should include more groups of people and it would be a more peaceful world. But the reality is in the business world, and for my 25 years, I said I was involved in diversity inclusion programs. I was, but what I really did, what my primary function was, is to run businesses. So the return on investment piece was critical to my success in the business world. And it makes all the difference with our clients. One of our most recent clients, they've been with us for a year now. They saw a 25% increase in top line revenue since we started working with them. So there is a tangible way to make a difference. And I think eventually diversity and inclusion programs will evolve to at least having that a piece of it, or having key performance indicators a piece of evaluating how successful the programs are.
Yeah, for sure. I know when I kind of stumbled into the idea of the benefits of diversity when I first was managing a team. I was managing a team of web and mobile developers, and I kind of inherited a diverse team, but then I hired and unintentionally hired some more diversity into the team. And I started realizing that, when we were doing our sprint plannings and coming up with brainstorming sessions and things like that, we were coming up with ideas that were very different than what I would think. And it really was beneficial, having different groups of people from different backgrounds, some people from different countries and different, cultural ideas saying, well, this is important to our group and this is important to our group, and putting that together, our products were able to become significantly better than what we would have produced without that. So, I had a firsthand knowledge.
That's probably one of the best testimonies I've ever heard about what we're achieving with our clients. That's a beautiful testimony. That's exactly the case. It's not just a matter of just having differences in cultural backgrounds or differences in gender or whatever it might be, but it's diversity of ideas. And those things actually allow you to have more diverse ideas come to the table. And it creates innovation. And the bottom line is it creates ROI.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's kind of what I was saying is that, for example, one of the people came up with an idea that we were talking about, this was, 15 years ago, about people going paperless and getting their bills online and things like that. And we had this large customer base that we would paper mail bills to. And he goes, you know what? I would go paperless if it was easy. I'm like, what do you mean if it was easy? He's like, if I just had to click one button. And then he came up with an idea that when you log in to pay, just have one button that says go green, yes or no. And you click yes and you're done. Because right now, it was a complicated process to go paperless. You had to check all these check boxes and go find it. And, so we just made it easy. We just did a little pop-up. And, at the end of that first month, we saved $40,000 in mailing and paper expenses. It's like, holy cow, this is, that's ongoing, recurring, savings. It's not just a one-time thing.
Oh,
that's a great innovation. It's sort of one of my favorite companies to study. And they've had a couple of rocky roads here lately, but I love Southwest Airlines and the model that they built. And, there's a company that started in 1971, 1973 is when they first started flying. And up until the pandemic, in an airline industry that I think over 80% of airlines have either gone out of business or merged. Mm-hmm. Every single year they were profitable and they never had a single layoff. And to your point, John, one of the first things they did was, why do we print paper tickets? Why don't we just give people pieces of plastic, which is where they started. And then when they get on the plane, they hand us the plastic back and it's got a little number and a letter on it. And they saved some ridiculous, I don't want to make up the number, but it was an insane amount of money they saved not printing paper tickets. And they had a lot of other innovations like that, which go along with just having diverse people and everybody's got a thought and everybody's got a voice. Very powerful.
Everybody's got a voice is key. Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, absolutely. So I wanted to talk a little bit to you, John, about being a Master Chief, because I've had several officers in the Navy on, and I remember specifically Coach Havlick was on, and he told me that you have to have a good Master Chief to hold you accountable. And I know one of the things you guys talk about is accountability. How is it that you've learned about accountability through your time in the Navy?
I love that he said that. That's so cool.
Very, very smart person, and not because I'm a Command Master Chief, just because, if you don't have a strong, we call it a strong spine. You can have a great C-suite with the most brilliant minds, and you can have absolutely amazing individual contributors and rank and file. But if that mid-level management, which is the spine of your organization, isn't strong, you're screwed. So accountability comes out in submarines because it's a very different organization. It does not matter if you've been out of basic training for 2 days or the Naval Academy for 2 days. When you come down that hatch, you're expected to contribute. Now, are you expected to contribute at the level of somebody who's been there for 5 years? No, but you're expected to contribute. You're expected to learn. You're expected to lead yourself. So it's a very different mindset. And that's how you get teenagers or someone out of, the academy who's 22 years old. That's how you get them to perform at a high level. And you hold them accountable at the appropriate level. But the key ingredient there, John, is they have a ton of support. There's very, very well laid out professional development. There's laid out qualifications. Everybody has what we would call a C daddy or C mommy. It's in the book, Diversity and Inclusion, but the Submarine Way. But think of it as a mentor or a coach. So you're not just set out there and yelled at. You're set out there and set up for success. And without accountability, none of that works. When we go into an organization, John, and you've probably heard this from a lot of guests, that, hey, what's the one thing that all organizations share? What we hear all the time is we need to get better at communication. Yeah. Our horizontal, meaning between departments, and our vertical, meaning in your department, it's just not as good as it should be. Well, that's not a communications problem. It's an accountability problem, right? Think about it. If you've known you've got a communications problem for 2 or 3 or 4 years and you haven't done anything about it, it's not a communications problem. That's a symptom of your core problem, which is accountability. So I learned that on submarines, and I learned that it wasn't brutal. Well, sometimes it was brutal. But it doesn't have to be brutal. It's actually a positive thing to help someone course correct before it becomes a big problem. So that's where I learned it, John, and that's how we've adjusted it to the corporate world. We do a lot of work with fire safety, a lot of work with police departments. Probably our core group is fast-growing IT and high-tech companies, but accountability is always core to what we do in our coaching and our training.
Yeah.
In fact, I would say it's probably the number one most requested workshop that we do.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, well, that makes perfect sense, because I've seen it, firsthand at several different environments that I've been in, where accountability kind of falls to the way, people don't want to ruffle the feathers. They don't want to hold people accountable, but there's ways of doing that without, being a jerk.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So,
it's called leadership, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think that, when I look at what I want in a leader, I want someone to hold me to high standards, make me a better person and hold me accountable to achieving those high standards. And that's the whole point of why I started this, was to put something out publicly so that, my employees that work for me, can listen to the things that I'm saying. And if I'm not living up to the persona that I'm putting out and that I'm talking about on the podcast, they can hold me accountable to that. And that was the whole purpose, is because I needed someone to hold me accountable. Like if you're going to go run a race, or, when I did my first marathon, I posted it on Twitter and Facebook that I was going to run a marathon. And if I didn't do that, then I could have stopped at any time and quit, and no one would know. But the fact that I said I was going to do it on this date and I'd already signed up, now people were going to hold me accountable to actually doing that and say, hey, how did that marathon go? How's the training coming? And things like that, which was, kind of motivation for me to continue to get better.
Well, you stuck your neck out there, didn't you?
Yeah.
How'd the marathon go?
It was hard. But no, it was fine.
It was to say horrible. It was horrible.
No, it was fine. It was the first one I did was the Outer Banks Marathon, and it's like completely flat for a good 20 miles. And like on mile 20, you have to cross over this big bridge going into Manio, and you can see it from like 4 miles away, and you see this massive bridge just like taunting you. And I decided that, I was going to run and not take any walking breaks or any stops until I got to the bridge. And then if I needed to, I would take a little break. So I took a little break, going up that bridge. And it was so hard to start back running until I saw this lady that was a good bit larger than me and older than me running past me. And I said, oh, hell no. But that was my motivation, my competitiveness to kind of catch up. But it was good. It was a lot of fun. And, it's been great. I don't really run much anymore because of my knees, but it's been a lot of fun.
Wow, that's great.
Cool story.
John was talking about one of the groups that we work with a lot. It seems like is consumer goods and high tech today, but we've also worked a lot with law enforcement. I mean, we've done a lot of times accountability training, but also something we call Core Compass 1 and Core Compass 2. So accountability has been critical with law enforcement. So that's been really rewarding to work with that group and know that in a particular community, you might be making a huge difference with the population. If they really embrace accountability of each other, like tapping each other if something's not going right, and there have been some things not going right. I mean, look at Louisville, Kentucky.
Yeah.
Then, and that you stop something like that happening, it's extremely, extremely rewarding. But accountability has been key with those groups of individuals. Do you have anything to add to that, John?
Yeah. What's interesting to me about accountability, and again, something I learned on submarines, sort of perfected it at Gallup when I was doing a ton of coaching, is it's very interesting that when you see something terrible happen in an organization, somebody punches somebody, or you see some of the things on the news about law enforcement, if you trace that back, and I'll use law enforcement because it's a visual example, that started with somebody bouncing somebody's head off the back door when they were already in cuffs. It started relatively small and nobody said anything. And it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And it's the same thing in organizations. There's that jerk in the meeting that either has to call somebody out or blame somebody else. And it's not, totally over the top, but nobody says, hey man, that wasn't really necessary. And it grows and it grows. Horrible accountability where it really does damage to an organization always starts small. And if you intercede then, when it's not so uncomfortable and not so ugly, not all, but the vast majority of it will be cut off before it ever gets big. And it's fascinating to watch people. You said it earlier, it's a little uncomfortable. It's a heck of a lot more uncomfortable when, your company's on the front page of fill in the blank, or it's being covered on CNN as having widespread abuse.
Harassment claim or
and it started 10 years ago, and a lot of people just went, well, that's just how Bob is. No, it's not. So I think that seed of bad behavior happens every time. We've never found an instance where somebody just shows up and says, you know what, I'm just going to start punching people in the nose. Never starts that way.
Yeah, and you see that with, going into cybersecurity as well, where, there's like a small exception that you make to your policies, and then next thing you know, that leads to a breach down the road. And it's not just because you were, shocked that something happened, it's because you kind of let the ball slip a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit here, and next thing you know, you're not even following your own policies.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah. Rule number 1, if the policy is outdated or the procedure, to use a submarine term, is outdated because of a piece of equipment is no longer relevant or it's been updated, you don't skip step 5. You eliminate step 5.
Yes.
And you update your procedure. Or pretty soon, everybody's playing with the nuclear reactor, just kind of going with their instincts. And that's going to end really, really badly.
And people will find an excuse to not use those procedures if they're out of date. It's so easy to say, I don't pay any attention to that anymore. They're so out of date. So it's just a simple thing, but if you hold people accountable for something, which is a process and procedure, then you're starting a discipline of holding people accountable for something that's tangible. And that, like as John said, it might seem like it's little, but it's actually pretty significant.
Yeah, for sure. One of the things you guys talk about is being a compassionate leader. And sometimes when you talk about accountability, people see that as being the opposite of compassion, but they're both kind of required, to be truly a good leader. You have to be compassionate, understand your people, and have empathy, but in holding people accountable helps with that. I think some people don't see the tie-in between those two.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. I would say that Compassionate Leader is one of my favorite programs. and I write the program. So I mean, I remember the passion that I felt when I wrote that program, but it's really critical. I mean, even when you're holding someone accountable, if you're using compassion in how respectful you are in talking to that individual, if you're using compassion in whether or not this is an inexperienced person or a super experienced person who should know better, those are things that you just incorporate into how you're having those conversations and how you're holding people accountable. If you're using accountability without compassion, then you're missing a key element in leadership in those conversations. It's really very important to balance those two things.
So let me ask you this. So for people like me that are, relatively technical, that sometimes don't have the extrovert personality skills that some people have, and we're not really good with, at talking to people, how can we, what are some practical things that we can do to kind of show people our compassionate side while we're, trying to be a good leader?
I would say make sure that you recognize that person's humanity. It's easy to have a conversation with someone sitting in front of you and just sticking to technical conversation or what needs to be done without really recognizing that person as an individual. So make sure you do that every day. Ask them how they are and actually wonder how they are, and get them to open up and talk a little bit. If you spend 5 minutes a day with the people that you interact with talking about something besides work, you will begin to see them as a human being first. And then when you want to have an accountability discussion, you pull on that relationship that you've already built with them. It's so difficult to have an accountability discussion with warmth and compassion if you don't recognize that person's humanity.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think it's, I like the idea of actually wondering how people are, because people say, like, how are you? And then they'll completely not listen to the answer.
Yo, that irritates the heck out of me.
John, I was just going to add, John, when it comes to people who are introverts or extroverts, we're a huge talent-based company, meaning, we all have very, very unique talents. And it's sort of an extrapolation, but some of those talents manifest themselves as introverts and sometimes as extroverts. If you're an introvert, you have to play to the game that you're dealt. And I'll ask people that are highly introverted and ask the question you asked. I can't do that because they're comparing themselves to this gregarious, outgoing person that quote unquote everybody likes. And it's like, we're dog freaks. We love our dogs. We love our animals. And I'll ask someone, hey, do you have animals? Oh, I love animals. I love animals. When your neighbor lost a pet, did you go, sucks to be you? Or did you go over there and say, man, I'm so sorry that Ruffy died? Well, that's empathy. So if you're an introvert, be an introvert in a way that you're comfortable, but you can still have those conversations. Where people make mistakes, John, is they try to be somebody else. A, it's not genuine, and B, eventually you're going to slip up. So if you're an introvert, those conversations are probably going to be, to Deb's point, a little bit more intimate. They're going to be one-on-one. They're going to be more in private. If you're an extrovert, it might be a little more gregarious. It might be go out to lunch and have that discussion. So you've got to play within your talent set. But as Deb said, at the end of the day, if you focus on the humanity of a person, it will come back to you. And the last thing about accountability is and compassion are completely linked. If you catch somebody early, John, making small mistakes, it is the ultimate compassion to help that person get better, rather than not doing anything until it's a huge deal and they might lose their job. Compassion is attached to accountability. If you separate them, you get lousy leadership. Yeah,
I agree with that 100%. I think that was really well said. Tell me a little bit about what your programs are like, your Core Compass 1 and 2, and what would that look like from a business that was interested in having you guys come in and help out?
Well, Core Compass 1 and 2, again, are our eight core programs. Those are typically done after the assessments and after the one-on-one coaching with key individuals as defined by our client. What they are, John, and Deb has done this brilliantly when and I'm not saying that because she's next to me and she has a baseball bat in her hand. No, it is a contributing factor to my being polite.
That's a really small bat.
Yeah. Well, Jill just made. But she's built these programs that they're built on each other, things like accountability, things like communication, things like compassionate leadership, things like how everyone is supposed to lead, things like ownership. She's built them so they each build on each other, but she's also built them in a way that they can be delivered as a 90-minute workshop virtually, or they can be delivered as a 3.5 hour on-site workshop. They're very malleable. The end result is Core Compass 1, we call sort of the bachelor's degree, and then Core Compass 2 is sort of the, PhD or master's program that builds on the bachelor's degree. They're synergetic. They are always reinforcing each other. And what happens when you're done with Core Compass 1 is everything that we create, Deb creates, is practical and immediately applicable. We don't talk about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I've managed to get an MBA and be pretty successful in business. I still don't know what the heck that thing is.
I do, by the way.
But Deb does, so it's okay. But this is practical things, and we're talking about it on your show here, that you can actually do tomorrow, as long as you practice it, as long as you apply it. So Core Compass 1 and 2 are 8 courses that are designed to be run concurrently, one after another. Is that the right word? Concurrent or consecutive?
Consecutive.
Okay, whatever. See, that's why Deb writes and I talk. So they're designed so that when you're done, John, you have leaders that have real tools in their toolbox to interact more effectively, to run their divisions, departments, or organizations more effectively, and to create a culture of inclusion. That's what the whole design is for those eight courses.
Yeah, that makes sense. When it comes to, a lot of your stuff is talking about like how we can become better leaders in general. And you said that your clientele is you're getting a lot of those high tech companies that are getting in there now. Do you see anything different in that space as far as like struggles and challenges that you see in the technical realm that are coming up more and more than maybe in other areas?
Yeah. In fact, a client that we had this last year is having trouble with achieving some of their top line revenue goals. And I think what they're discovering is they've disconnected the people aspects, the developing people, that from what they do with their revenue. And I think one of the things that they're realizing is that it's not just about the technical nature of the products.
Yeah, the innovations of the technology.
It's not just that. And you said it best just a few minutes ago about what I realized with my really diverse team is that we have really great ideas and that we give them the space to be able to talk about their ideas, and we give them a seat at the table, and we actually implement those ideas. We have way more innovation. So I think in the tech sector, they are beginning to realize that there is a direct correlation between developing people and top line revenue. It really does make a difference when you develop people. I think in the past, and I'm not sure how far back to look, maybe 10 years, 15 years, it was really around the technology and how innovative the technology was, and not necessarily, the people contribution. And very good point. The people were an afterthought. And I think they're beginning to realize that you have to put the cart before the horse.
Yeah. If you're a high tech, fast growing company and you're looking either for, VC money or sale, what a lot of companies don't realize is you might have the coolest products in the world and you might be on the top of everything. They don't want to come in and run your company. They expect people in leadership to be solid and in place. And to Deb's point, it's kind of like when we've worked with pharma research, scientists, engineers, and folks like that typically became successful because of their expertise in the technical side, not so much in the people side. But as you grow and you position yourself, you better have a pretty solid core organization, leadership-wise and management-wise, especially at that mid-level management level, or you're not going to be nearly as appealing as the next company.
The other realization, I think, and this sort of started when millennials first started to hit the workplace, 2010, 2011, 2012, there was this perception that they were so very different that they needed latte bars and rock climbing walls to be happy in a job. And that really professional development and helping people have a better understanding of what their core was far more valuable to all generations, not just millennials, but all generations, And when you develop your inner core, you don't just develop your inner core for your spouse or your girlfriend. You develop your inner core for all of the people that you share and all the people that you work with. So it has value across the board. We don't just have, 3 people inside of us, the person that goes to the work, the person that goes to the gym, and the person that lives at home. We are one person. And when we've developed that one person, we are good across the board in all areas.
Yeah, I think that's really well said. And, when you go back to what you were saying about the tech companies trying to, put, I don't know, beanbags everywhere and bowling alleys in there, giving everybody free coffee. It sounds great for recruitment, but it's not good for keeping people, And,
yep, absolutely.
Having good leadership and good career development and good paths, to help people grow as human beings is more important on keeping someone than just, having, a video game room or something.
Yep.
Yeah, we do. I'll Gallup.
Especially when the work environment is in conflict with that. It looks really fun, but it's really not.
Yeah. We have a really cool bowling alley, and if I ever see you using it during the workday, I'm going to beat the. Yeah. A little piece of Gallup data here, and I think it changed about 8 or 9 years ago. Up until that, the most common reason people left their organization was because of their manager. That was the number one reason. The number one reason now is a lack of professional development, directly to your point, John. So you can get people in the door with cool things and cool toys and, make sure they only talk to the people that love it. But if you don't have an environment that invests in professional development, invests in developing people, they're not going to stay. It's not like baby boomers 30 years ago that were loyal to the core. Not anymore. I mean, if you don't have what's going on, I'm out of here. I don't care if it's a year or 2 years. So you better have that piece of professional development, and it better be obvious and not just lip service, because you'll get called on it and you'll lose your best talent. Best talent leaves first. People that can't get work anywhere else stay. And eventually you got a pretty sour organization.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's what a lot of people don't realize is once you start seeing that first wave of people leaving, that's the people that you don't want to leave.
Right. Stop it now.
So tell me a little bit about how can people pick up a copy of your book? What would they find in that book if they wanted to go get it? And how can they connect with you online if they're interested in the Submarine Way and getting involved in Compass your courses?
Well, you can get Diversity and Inclusion the Submarine Way and Up Periscope, putting traditional leadership in the crosshairs. You can get both of those books at any bookstore internationally as well. Mm-hmm. So they might not necessarily have it on the shelves because, bookstores like to have new books coming in all the time, but you can order it and you can get it on Amazon, and it's a really good price on Amazon. So you can get it just about anywhere. So that's question number 1. Question number 2, what's in the books? A lot of the stuff that we've talked about already. We've talked about compassionate leadership. We've talked about accountability and leadership. It's a lot of the stuff that we've talked about. John would say wrapped around the hull of a submarine, because there's sub-stories woven through both of the books. Some are just kind of fun. Some are amazing, and some are, they really teach you about leadership. Yeah. So.
Awesome. It's a combination that is extremely unique, which is why we have that published patent, it is submarine leadership meets Gallup science data and consulting meets very successful executive, Fortune 300. In other words, how does this really work in business? And all 3 of those have been merged. We've taken the best out of the 3 of them and distilled them down. You'll read all of that in both of the books. The second book actually came out of our clients, John. They were like, we love diversity and inclusion the Submarine Way. What if you wrote like almost a pocket guide that was distilled to almost pure leadership, which is what Up Periscope, putting traditional leadership in the crosshairs. Well, in a submarine, when you put something in the crosshairs, it's because you're getting ready to sink it. And we firmly believe that most of kind of traditional leadership needs to be sunk because it doesn't work as well as sort of a fresh approach.
And then as far as finding us, if you type in the Submarine Way, we will fill up pages and pages on Google. There's one caveat to that. There's a beer called I think, the Submarine Way. So the beer comes up too, so you can order beer and also look us up at the same time. But we're there. You can Google my name, you can Google John's name, or the Submarine Way. Our website is right there. You can put in, there's a million different contact me on the website. Yeah, the submarineway.com. And we will give you a call back. You can also call us at 843-468-0470.
Yeah. And we'll actually answer. It won't even go to a mouse. It'll actually answer for you back shortly.
He won't answer at midnight, I promise you. But.
No, I won't.
All right. Well, awesome. I'll link all that up in the show notes too at geekleader.com, so people can go there and link over to your book, your website, and LinkedIn, and wherever else we can find you guys online. I really appreciate it.
Yep. This was great. We learned a lot from you. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. We do a ton of these, and this is definitely been on the short list of really cool. Like, we don't usually learn. Sorry for all the thousands of podcasts we've done. We don't usually learn from podcast hosts, but I got a couple of notes and I'm going to steal, and I'm not paying royalties for them.
Awesome. You can take all that I give you.
Don't do that.
But no, I appreciate you guys coming on. I really enjoyed the conversation, and I think it was excellent.
Thank you so much for.
I'll have to say, thanks for having us. It's been a pleasure and an honor.
If you enjoyed that episode, please leave a rating and review in Apple Podcasts. I'd greatly appreciate that. And also, don't forget to check out merch. We have some T-shirts that I've designed that are on at geekleader.com. You can click on the merchandise section there and check that out. And also, don't forget about the books from our guests. So if you like this guest and other guests that have written books, please go ahead and check that out at geekleader.com. I would greatly appreciate it, and I'm sure they would too.